Hello everyone and welcome to this video of our Python tutorial series. In this video, we will be covering a topic which many of the Python learners who are just beginning to learn Python consider it as a confusing topic. So I will try to simplify the topic as much as I can. Let's dive right in. The topic we will be covering is slicing. Before going to the code, let's just see what slicing actually means. So if we just Google slicing, what we will get is slice as verb, which means cutting something, especially food, into slices. Slicing in Python exactly means the same, cutting something into different pieces, into different slices. Let's just say I want to cut some part of my data into different parts, into different slices. So that will be called as slicing in Python. We have studied strings in Python in our previous video, so we will be performing string slicing. So let's just say I want to declare a string, let's say string equals to, let's say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, A to L. Now we have already declared our string from A to L. So before going to slicing of strings, we will just have to take a step back. Let's first see how arrays work. First of all, what is array? Array is a collection of data of same type. What does that mean? What we understood right now is an array can be something that can store multiple data of that same data type. We can say that our string stores multiple characters which are of same data type, which are all characters, into a single entity. So our variable string here is storing multiple characters from A to L within a single variable. So a string is an array of characters. Now there is another term which goes hand by hand whenever we say that we are using array. The term is index. Now what is index? Just imagine that if we want to go to a particular address, a particular place, but we only know the area, the locality of that address or that place. Let's just say you want to come to my house and I have only told you the locality in which I live. You cannot come to my house accurately unless I mention you the house number, the street number, and other details about my location. You cannot come until I specify that. So we can consider a locality as an array and my home as a particular individual element of that array. So if you want to visit an individual element of an array, you will have to know the complete address of that element in that particular locality, in that particular array. So that pinpoint address, that pinpoint location of that element in an array is called index. Now how do we specify index? Let's just say we have an integer array storing 9 values 7, 11, 6, 55, 98, 45, 16, 96 and 46. So if I want to address the first element of an array, I will have to use the index of that array. The index of an array always begins with 0 and is always incremented by the size of 1. So it's a series of integer beginning from 0 till the size of the array. Now if our array has 9 elements in it and we are beginning the counting from 0, so obviously the index of the last element will be n minus 1, where n is whatever the size of that array. In this case we have 9 elements in our array, so the index value is from 0 to 8. Now let's just say I want to use the first element of the array, so I want to access the value 7 in our array. I want to access this value here in our array, so I will have to use the index 0, the index corresponding to it, index 0. Now let's just say I want to access the fourth element of the array. Fourth element here will be 1, 2, 3, 4. As I have already specified that the index starts from 0, So the index of that element will always be n minus 1, where n is the position of the element in that array. So the index of the fourth element will always be 3. So if I want to access 55 from our array value, I will have to use the index 3 with that array to access my fourth value. And you can see the term here, lower bound and upper bound. What are they? Lower bound and upper bound are the boundaries of the indexes of that array. Lower bound will be 0 by default unless we exclusively create any array which is continued at a particular memory location, which we won't be needing much. So let's just say lower bound will always be 0 in our cases, which we will be using, and upper bound will always be the last index available in that array, which will be the size of that array minus 1. So if we access the lower bound value of our array, we will get the first value in our array, and if we access the upper bound index value of our array, we will get the last value in our index. Now I believe that I have cleared what indexes are and how they work. Now let's try to access the values by indexes in our string variable which we created here. So let's say I want to access d in that variable, d in that array of characters. So I know that my d is located in first, second, third and fourth place here. So I know the index of that value will be 3. I am accessing the fourth value in my array by specifying the index as 4 minus 1, which is 3. I got d. Now let's say I want to access L, the last element in that array, and I don't want to count the length of the array, and we know that we have already a function for that. I got the length of the string, so I want to use the last element of the array, and I know the size of our string is 12, so I will just have to mention 12 minus 1, which is 11, and I got L, the last element of our array. Now if you have noticed, I am using squared brackets here. In any language, if we want to access the elements of an array, we will always be using square brackets to enclose the indexes in that. Now let's just say I want to experiment with it. As I told you multiple times in my previous video that programming is for fun. We have to have fun. Otherwise it's just boring and we will lose interest in it. We know that our indexes end at n minus 1, where n is the length of the array, and here in this case the length is 12, so indexes should end at 11. Now I want to try index 13. What should I get? I got an index error which specifies that string index out of range. What does out of range means? Out of range means that the range that we specified for our indexes, which is 0 to 11, our index that we put here has exceeded that range, is out of that bound, is out of that range. So whenever we try to access the index which is not in that specified range of 0 to n minus 1, it will throw us an error. So beware of that. Now we have learned about indexes. Now let's go to our original topic, slicing. What is slicing? In indexing, in array indexing and accessing elements through array, we have cut our array in n number of pieces, where n is the number of elements. We have cut our array into each individual elements, but we want to access the parts of those pieces in our original array, which means that I want to print, let's say, A, B, C, D only from that whole string. One way is string concatenation. Let's say string 0 plus string 1 plus string 2 plus string 3. Here it will be returning us A, it will be returning us B, it will be returning us C, and it will be returning us D. And we have concatenated all of them together. So we got A, B, C, D. But it is too repetitive, it is too tiring to write the whole code if we want to access the quite long part of that array or our string. So it is tiring. and not efficient. We use slicing in that. We know how to work with indexes, so let's go to the shortcut of slicing. Let's say we have a string F, A, C, E. We know the indexes are 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, if we look here, we have got negative indexes too. Negative indexes are nothing but just the number line representation. So, what does negative means? That we go backward from 0. So, if we go backward from 0, we will reach here, the last element of our string. Let's say I want to access L here. I have used 11 here to access the last element of our array L. I can use string -1. I got the same output. Similarly, if we move -2, that is 2 spaces back. So 1 space back we got here. Moving on another step back, we will be here at C, the second element. Moving another step from -2 to -3, we will be here. And moving another step backward to -4, we will be here. So negative indexes works too. Now if we see str1 to 3 here, this is our str1 variable, the name of the array in which these elements are stored. Here we have specified the range of the indexes whose value we want. So what does that mean? We have specified 1 to 3. The column here is the one which mentions that it is the range of the array that we want. And 1 and 3 are indexes, so we want this range. Now we will have to keep in mind that whenever we want to use slicing, the last index of the range that we mention here, the upper bound of the index that we mention here is not included in the output, which means 1 to 3 will always give me the elements at the index 1 and 2. It excludes the upper bound, it excludes the 3 here. Now similarly, we can slice through negative indexes too, as we can see here. We know that at -3 index we have the same value which the index 1 is storing, and at -1 index we have the same value as 3. So we know that the index of an array always goes from lower value to upper value, lower to higher, and the much bigger the negative value, the lower it is. So -3 is lower than -1. So -3 is our lower bound and -1 is our upper bound. At -3 we have A and at -1 we have E. Now we know that upper bounds are not included in slicing. So the output we get is only this, A to C. I hope slicing is clear. Now let's try the examples. Let's say I want to get the ABCD again from our string A to L, which I wanted to get here, but it was long and tiring. So what I can do is I can just mention the range of the index from which we want. Let's say I want to get the first 4 elements. So what I can do is 0 to 3. I know that the index of D element in our string is 3, the one we learned here. If I execute the command, I only get A, B, C, but not D, because I have mentioned the upper bound here as 3, and upper bound is not included in slicing. So what I can do is I can just increase the number by 1, so that the upper bound is considered as the index where E is located. So it is not included. That's why we got A, B, C, D, the first 4 element. Let's just say I want to slice a particular string from start to a particular point, a particular element in that string. Now what I can do is, I know the index is always 0. The starting index will always be 0. It can never change. So I can just mention that by default use the starting point by not mentioning any lower bound index, and I have to mention the upper bound. Let's say this time we want to print A to H. So the index starts from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And to include 7, I have to increase the upper bound by 1. So colon 8, which means by default treat the lower bound as the lower bound of that array. And if I execute the command, I got A to H. So by not specifying, by not mentioning the lower bound, the the slicing of the string will by default be done from the starting of the string. Now let's say I want to do the same with ending. This is where this method of slicing actually comes in use, because in many cases we don't know where the array actually ends. So we will have to use the len function here to get the string length and then process accordingly. But we can do the similar thing which we done here by doing what? Let's say I want to use the last 4 letters of our string this time, and I know the index of I is 8. So I specified lower bound here as 8 and I leave the upper bound section of the slicing part as it is. So by default it slices the strings until the end. So I got I, J, K, L. So this is the method that we can easily use to slice strings by not using the len function in user inputted string, which can be of variable lengths. So this is where this format of slicing by leaving the upper bound and or lower bound empty comes in play. Now there is another variation in slicing. Let's say I want to print the whole string by slicing. So we know that if we do not mention the lower bound, it treats it as starting, and if we do not mention the upper bound, it treats it that till the ending. So what I can do is just put colon here. I don't mention the lower bound here, I don't mention the upper bound here. It returns the same string to me. Now another variation is, let's just say I have a string of numbers this time and I am storing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1 to 9 numbers in my string, and I want to get only the odd numbers in the string. How can I do that? What I can do is I can just access string 0, string 2, string 4 and access them one by one from indexes, but that is not the optimum solution that we can reach to. So what is optimum solution? The optimal solution is right there, but we have not seen it yet. How is it right there? There is another section of our slicing part which we have not used until now, but we will be using it. I know that if I just put column and nothing else, I will get the whole string, but I want to get each and every alternate element in our string. So let's try an example of getting only odd numbers from 1 to 6 for now. I know that the index of 1 is 0 and the index of 6 will be 5, and I want to get 0 to 6. In slicing I have to mention upper bound, so 0 to 6. I got the result as string 1 to 6. Now I only want to get the odd numbers here. The invisible section until now is that there is another colon that we can use, and the value after that will be used as the step size. Now what is step size? Step size is the leap that we can take, the distance that we can cover in a single step. If I mention 2 here, which means that I am covering 2 elements at a time, right? So if I am covering 2 elements at a time and I want to go from 0 to 6, that is 1 to 6 here, which means the elements 1 to 6, and I am covering 2 elements each time. I got the string here at 0 index as 1, step size is 2, so I left the next element and came back at this element here. I have already covered my step size, so the slicing returned me this element and then it left this element here as a part of step size. So I have stepped over that element and slicing returned me 5. The step size is still 2. I have stepped over this element here 6, but the string ends here because I have only mentioned 0 to 6. Now the array is empty after that. So my slicing terminates here. I got 1, 3 and 5 alternative elements in that array. Now let's say I want to print all the elements in my array which are odd. So I know that if I don't mention lower and upper bound, I will get the whole string, and I have mentioned the step size as 2. I got all the odd numbers. Now let's say I want to get the elements which are even in nature, which are even numbers from our string. I know that my even number starts from 2. The first occurrence of an even number is 2 at index 1. So I will just mention 1 in my lower bound. That's it. I got 2, 4, 6, 8 as the output. Now why is that? I have mentioned 1 till end as the part of slicing. So I got only this array. I only got this substring here. And for step size 2 mentioned here, I got the first element 2, skipped 1 which is 3 and got the next element which is 4. Skipped 1 again which is 5, got 6, skipped 7, got 8. That's how it works. Now let's say I want to skip 3 numbers. As our string is just a pure sequence of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I will get 3, 6 and 9. So what I can do is just increase the step size by 3. Let's say what we get. I got 1, 4, 7 because the starting element is 1. So if I want to print 3, 6 and 9, the multiples of 3, I will have to mention the lower bound as the index of our first occurrence of multiple of 3, which is 3, which is at the index 2. I got 3, 6, 9. So that will be all for this lecture. I hope that you understood what slicing means, how it works, how you can use step size. Also in slicing we can use negative indexes as lower bound, upper bound and step sizes. So experiment with them, have fun, get stuck somewhere and get the error. It's the best way of learning any programming language. Get stuck somewhere, get the error and try to resolve it by yourself. This is the best way of learning any programming language, not just Python. Because you learn some new insights how the language work and what we cannot do, and if we get some error like this in future we can easily resolve it. Because yes, we have already stuck in that error and we know how to resolve it. Otherwise we will just have to research it again and see how it usually works. So it's good that we cover all the basics and the errors and issues related to it right here, right now. So that will be all for this video. Leave a like and comment if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel and thank you for watching. Until next time.